Finally, embracing a nonsensical, uber-woke and extreme ideology that her people oppose is catching up with scheming Sturgeon, the Scottish First Minister, who is on the ropes over allowing male rapists who farcically claim to have transitioned into women's-only prisons. Following the horror case of the double rapist Adam Graham, who dishonestly became Isla Bryson to avoid a men's jail, comes Andrew Burns. Well, this sounds familiar, doesn't it? After being jailed for stalking a 13-year-old girl, scumbag Burns decided to become Tiffany Scott and was about to be moved to a jail that aligns with his new gender over the weekend, despite being viewed as the most dangerous female trans prisoner in Scotland. Astonishingly, this case prompted Alice J. Edwards, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, to speak out. She tweeted, #Scotland, female prisoners have a right to be protected from violent sex offenders no matter how they identify. Where is the common sense? Clearer guidelines are needed. Only such overwhelming condemnation from fellow globalists forced Sturgeon into a humiliating U-turn, with the SNP reluctantly announcing the move of all trans prisoners would be paused. Now, such a concession to common sense is a hammer blow to the stupidity of Sturgeon's sick gender recognition reform bill, which even allows for child abusers and rapists to self-ID while on trial, forcing their victims to refer to them on the stand by their new spurious pronouns. After the pause was announced, Sturgeon's arch-rival over the protection of women, J.K. Rowling, tweeted, "But Nicola Sturgeon's made it very clear that every women's group and safeguarding expert raising concerns about her supposedly progressive agenda is a bigot. What can possibly have changed? Surely not her cast iron principles." And it was under that context that Sturgeon, losing the support of ordinary Scots, suffered the biggest metaphorical car crash during her time running Scotland in this interview today.
My question is, are all trans women women? You haven't answered that question.
Well, that's not the point that we're dealing with here.
That's the question I'm asking.
Trans women are women, but in the prison context, there is no automatic right for a trans woman.
So there are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman?
No, there is circumstances in which a trans woman will be housed in the male prison estate.
Is there any context in which a woman born as a woman will be housed in the male estate?
Look, we're talking here about trans women.
And I'm now asking about women born as women.
I don't think there are circumstances there, but...
So it's different for trans women?
Well, yes, and I'm not...
So they're not equal?
Okay then, doesn't that make you a trans exclusionally radical feminist, Nick? You know, a TERF? Something you think is such a bad thing? The crown has well and truly slipped off Queen Nicola. Scotland's NHS is in crisis. Drug deaths remain at an all-time high in Scotland. Her illegal independence referendum has been rightly rejected by the courts, and ordinary, honest, hard-working Scots are standing up against the culture war she is waging, where poor trans folk have become her hapless punching bag. Just like with her woke hero, Jacinda Ardern, voters have woken up to the fact the reality of scheming Sturgeon is nothing like the slick PR puffery. The game is up, and she'll soon be forced, just like the New Zealand PM, to give up. But to respond now, my superstar panel, top Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and former Brexit Party MEP and political commentator Belinda de Lucy. What a car crash, Carol Malone. Nicola Sturgeon has to admit publicly she's a TERF, exactly what she has been driving her despicable hate mob towards J.K. Rowling for all these years.
Didn't she say the other day as well that anyone who opposed her gender reform bill was either a transphobe or a bigot or a misogynist? That was the three things. And that she's talking about most of Scotland when she says that, because most of them don't agree with her gender reform bill. You know what I find really astonishing? This could all have been avoided with a bit of common sense. How could she not think it was wrong for a double trans rapist to be put into an all-women's prison? How could she not know, not only that was wrong, but there would be a reaction to that? And I'm just, it just defies belief. And And the answer to all of this is really simple. You do not put trans women into a women's prison. And I don't care if they're violent sex offenders. I don't care if they're rapists. Any trans woman should not be in a woman's prison. Currently, here's a figure for you. Currently, in the UK, there are 230 inmates in the UK that are currently living under a different gender. Of all of those, 97, that's 42%, are in jail for sex crimes. Of those, 44 have been convicted of rape, 14 of child sex offences. Now, these are
And compare that to the actual female population.
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
the figures are totally...
And compare it to the male population in jail. Only 20% of those are sex offenders. So it is astonishing to me that she didn't get this was going to happen. But I think, and even last week, I wrote about this in my column lead last week, even on the day that was all blowing up last week, there were SNP MPs saying that this guy, and I would not call her by her female name, this guy, Adam Graham, was saying he deserved fairness.
Oh, yeah.
His two victims, the two women he savagely raped, deserve fairness. But have you ever heard Sturgeon talk about those two women and all of this?
And by the way, one of those women who was raped spoke out.
She did.
Over the weekend, anonymously to the Sunday Mirror. And she said there was absolutely no way that her rapist could be a trans woman. Of course, Belinda, that adds to this bloke's wife, who has also spoken out saying that he's transitioned to game the system. So the game is up for Scheming Sturgeon because she's a TERF now too.
Absolutely.
And being a TERF, by the way, is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, is it?
Being a TERF is a badge of honour, as Nicola Sturgeon is proving. I mean, surely this brain fart moment in human history has to come to an end now. It is no wonder that a law based on lies is unravelling. I have a great respect for anyone who wants to identify how they like, wear whatever they like. But if you are going to say a trans woman is a woman, then that, unfortunately, is a falsehood. And it also increases risk to women and girls. And what Nicola Sturgeon has done, she has vindicated every single woman that has come under complete fire, being called a bigot, a transphobe, being called horrendous things for just saying women need their single-sex spaces. They've all been vindicated. She's been a very unlikely, unwilling hero, because she's literally used her platform to prove that this is unworkable.
But she's also rendered her own reform bill a dud. Yeah. Because this just shows what can happen.
Now, Benjamin, you have been, let's be honest about this, in the woke mob, attacking J.K. Rowling and attacking folk like her for months and months and years and years. Do you admit you have got this spectacularly wrong?
I mean, the last person I ever want to talk about is J.K. Rowling, because it doesn't tend to lead to anything constructive. But look, what I think, I definitely disagree on a broad sense with the other three people on this programme tonight. But what I can't deny is that Nicola Sturgeon has done more to damage and undermine transgender people's equality in this last 2 weeks than Carol or Belinda ever could have, frankly.
Because she is waging the culture war, isn't she? She is waging the culture war, and trans people are just her little battering ram. She doesn't give a damn about trans people. She cares about woke ideology.
No, that's not true at all. But look, what is common sense is that if your crime is that you attacked a woman, then that is the part of this story that matters of why you shouldn't be in a women's prison, not your gender identity.
Oh,
but
it's
not.
It's not true. Most men who commit sexual crimes against women don't even get charged. So how do you know which man is safe or not based on what he's been arrested?
No, I don't think you understand what I just said. I meant the fact that this person committed rape against women is why they should not be in a women's prison.
So you're a TERF too.
But no,
you're
that's
in the TERF club too.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a TERF.
So you admit that this Adam Graham and Tiffany or
Andrew Burns
to use his real name. You admit they should not be in women's jails. You admit that?
Of course they shouldn't, right? Because
so you're a TERF.
Because their attack was on a woman. And I would just point out that
you're a trans-exclusionary radical feminist too.
No,
you are a TERF.
I've got common sense. Try it, Dan. You know what? The truth is that if you actually look at this person in question, they have not sought legal recognition. They have not sought healthcare for being transgender.
That's what her bill is about.
But this is my point.
3 weeks on
She wants
3 months.
She wants to strip all of that.
No, hang on. So this is not an example of what the bill talks about, because this person hasn't followed any of the
reform bill. Do you still support that bill? Well, I think that is despicable, because you know that means that someone like this Adam Graham can legally go into court and force their victim to call them she and her and by their fake name Isla Bryson. That's what this law
and Ben,
does.
why don't male prisons accommodate vulnerable men in a separate section? Why is the burden of men's mental health always forced on women? We have nothing to do with these vulnerabilities. Let them have a special space for vulnerable trans women and vulnerable males, many who are under, at risk in males' prisons as well, and have it in a men's prison environment, just a separate wing. Why can't they do that?
Well,
they have to go after women all the time.
Well, hang on, I think that's a perfectly sensible idea, right?
So you're a TERF. Okay, you're a TERF. Great.
This is
great. You're a TERF.
Here is the ultimate illustration of why this bill can never work.
It's not because it is wrong to try and apply the challenges and the traumas and the problems that regular trans folk who are as hard-working as taxpayers as everyone else. It's wrong to judge them on the basis of the prisoners among their community.
What we're saying is you should not be allowed to self-ID. There should be some medical intervention, some psychiatric intervention before you can.
It was always going to be used for people by nefarious means.
I'm sorry.
And actually, that has undermined genuine trans people who have spent years going through trauma to get what they are.
Dan,
but actually, do you know the great conclusion from today? The brilliant conclusion from today is that folk like Benjamin Butterworth and folk like Scheming Sturgeon have spent years trying to attack so-called trans exclusionary radical feminists, have tried to make them the target of hate mobs, like we saw in Scotland last week with those despicable folk holding the signs "Decapitate TERFs" with SNP MPs in front of them. And actually, what they have proven today is that Benjamin Butterworth is a TERF, Nicola Sturgeon is a TERF. There is nothing wrong with being a TERF.
Dear.
What being a TERF is about is protecting the rights of biological women, not undermining the rights of trans women who are doing the right thing.
Hear, Dan.
My lawyer will be on the phone after that. I'm not a TERF.
You'd exclude a trans woman from
because if you commit a crime, then you give up all sorts of civil rights. That's not like everyone else. Anyway.
Belinda Lucy, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, thank you so much. Still